What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got the Season 3 update, and I went through the patch notes in yesterday's video and covered all the things that they mentioned within those patch notes, or at least all the important things. But if you guys have been paying attention throughout the year with Modern Warfare, a really big trend that we've been seeing is they often make unannounced changes in the background. They don't mention these changes in the patch notes for whatever reason, whether that's intentional or not. And it turns out this update was no different. There were a handful of changes behind the scenes that weren't announced at all within the patch notes. So today I'm going to be going through that. Now I do want to give a big thank you for a lot of people just letting me know things that they thought may have changed with this update so I could put them to the test and see if they did in fact change. Now, the first major change that I don't know why they wouldn't mention this in the patch notes because it's a very big and obvious change. The High Alert perk got a massive buff with yesterday's update. Now, for those that don't know, pre-patch, if you were using High Alert and an enemy player would look at you from outside of your field of view, as long as they didn't have the Cold-Blooded perk, the edges of your screen would glow bright yellow. So it was basically just an indicator letting you know somebody somewhere outside of your field of view is currently looking at you. After yesterday's patch though, High Alert will now tell you the general direction that that enemy player is in when they're looking at you, as long as they don't have the counter, which is Cold-Blooded. So if they're on the left side of your screen and they're looking at you, but they're out of your field of view, then the left side of your screen will glow and not the other edges. Same thing goes if they're behind you or to your right. And this is a huge buff for High Alert because there's a big difference between knowing that somebody somewhere outside of your field of view, which is a huge area, especially if you're on console with a really limited field of view. That's a pretty huge area, and it doesn't really narrow it down too much pre-patch, but post-patch, it now narrows it down quite a bit for you, and it's a huge leg up compared to the pre-patch High Alert. So that's probably the biggest, most obvious change that was made behind the scenes with this update. But there were several other things I tested. A lot of people have been claiming that they feel like the MP7 or the M4 got a nerf. And I did do the testing for multiplayer at least, and in multiplayer, there is no noticeable change that I can notice with either of these guns. However, it does seem like they're handling some weapon balancing differently within Warzone, and I think that's where a lot of the people are coming from when they're saying they feel like something got nerfed. And unfortunately, since we don't have custom games for Warzone, it's nearly impossible to test this properly in a controlled environment to see if things actually changed with that. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave this one as conclusive for multiplayer. They didn't change in multiplayer, but inconclusive when it comes to Warzone. It is possible that the MP7 and M4 got touched a little bit for Warzone, but unfortunately, I just can't say for certain. Now, getting back to multiplayer, there was actually a map change that was made that for some reason wasn't mentioned in the patch notes. It might seem like a relatively minor change, but it will actually have a pretty big impact on the overall flow, and this is on Kandor Hideout. With this map, previously, these doors were blocked off, and this little passageway here to the middle of the map, to this middle building, that was cut off completely before this patch. But post-patch, they've now opened that up, so that opens up quite a few options to get towards the middle of the map, and that definitely changes things quite a bit. Now, moving on to the next thing, this is Warzone related, and this is something that changed last week. This didn't change with the most recent update. This is something that was stealth changed the week before with an update that they didn't mention. And this is, they either nerfed the RPG slightly against vehicles, or they slightly buffed the health of vehicles. In either case, many people have been noticing this, myself included. RPGs will no longer instantly blow up an SUV or a helicopter, whereas before last week's update, they would always instantly explode those vehicles, even if those vehicles were at full health. Now, RPGs are just disabling those vehicles, assuming they were at full health before the rocket hit them. So yeah, that was another change that was definitely made with last week's update that was never mentioned in any patch notes as far as I'm aware. As for the next thing that changed with this update that they didn't mention, this is more of just like a quality of life fix within the menus. Those little green diamonds that show up indicating that you have something new in one of the categories of the menu, if you just want to get rid of those quickly, instead of going into the menu and having to find that exact item that is new and like hover over it to get rid of that green diamond, now all you have to do is tab over to that section and click L3 on controller. Unfortunately, I don't know what the key is for PC. But if you click that, it will just get rid of that diamond, so you don't have to actually scroll through and find that exact item. And this is something that I'm sure a lot of people are really happy about. I kind of just gave up on those diamonds a long time ago, so for me it doesn't make that much of a difference, but there's a lot of people out there that just can't stand having those green diamonds constantly appearing on their menus, and this is going to save them a lot of time to get rid of those diamonds. Now, let's get into a few other things that I tested here, just based on people mentioning that they felt like something might be different. or they're just wondering if something has been fixed. The first thing is the oil can suppressor. For those that don't know, the oil can suppressor in the menus, it states that it increases your damage range, but it actually does the opposite. It reduces your damage range by 15%. So that's extremely misleading, and it's probably some form of a bug or something, or just something they overlooked. But I've had several people ask, did this get fixed with the updates? And no, it hasn't been fixed yet. It still reduces your damage range, so there's no reason to be using the oil can suppressor. Another thing that's been floating around the community, and a lot of people have been tagging me in this, is apparently now people are saying that in Warzone, the heartbeat sensor is no longer countered by Ghost. Even though the menu still says that Ghost is the counter to heartbeat sensors, people are claiming that they've been running into several situations where an enemy has found them with a heartbeat sensor and they had Ghost active at the time. So for once, I actually managed to get my 2 different accounts within the same plunder lobby to test this. And in this situation, my dummy account has Ghost on, and I've got a heartbeat sensor, and as you can see here, Ghost still does work against heartbeat sensors, but that doesn't necessarily mean that sometimes it doesn't bug out, because a lot of people really seem truly convinced that that's the only way that the enemy saw them was with the heartbeat sensor. So there is a chance that sometimes Ghost bugs out and doesn't counter the heartbeat sensor, but based on my testing here, you can clearly see for yourself Ghost still is the counter to a heartbeat sensor, and it should be working for you at least most of the time, unless you happen to experience a bug. Another thing that people have been mentioning that they're convinced changed within Warzone is they noticed that FMJ may actually be countering players' armor now, whereas pre-patch it didn't. And this is actually due to many situations, and I've seen it for myself, where the health and the armor are being depleted at the same time while being shot at by an enemy player, which shouldn't be the case. Normally, with bullets at least, you have to destroy their armor before you can start cutting into their health, but there are plenty of clips out there that are showing somebody taking damage to their health and armor simultaneously. And the assumption here is that it's FMJ, and that makes sense. FMJ is designed to punch through armor, so I can definitely understand that that's what people are going to. But like I said, I managed to get into this Warzone lobby and test at least a few little things, and I can confirm FMJ still doesn't punch through armor. It doesn't give you any benefit whatsoever against enemy players unless you're shooting through some form of cover. So this is going to require a lot more testing from me. I've been trying to figure out what could possibly be dealing damage to their health and their armor at the same time. I was able to test headshots, that didn't do it. Also, a few other weapon perks like frangible wounding and frangible disabling. Same thing, they didn't deal damage to the health and armor at the same time. So now that I know that I can sometimes get 2 accounts within the same plunder lobby, that does open up some more opportunities for me to test things within the context of Warzone to see what exactly is going on, and I really want to try and figure out why that's happening sometimes, where players are able to deal damage to the health and the armor simultaneously. So I'll be sure to keep you guys updated on that as soon as I figure out what's going on here. But with that, that's everything that I was able to find that wasn't mentioned in the patch notes for this most recent update that did actually change. Once again, I just wanted to restate the fact that I find this to be really frustrating that we aren't getting all of the gameplay related changes within the patch notes. When it comes to fixing exploits and stuff, it's totally fine for them to be vague about that to prevent people from potentially figuring out new exploits. But when it comes to changing the balance of a perk or a weapon, or literally changing a section of a map, I really don't see why they wouldn't include that in the patch notes. This just creates so much uncertainty with the game because, of course, there's probably several other things that change behind the scenes that we didn't catch and we might not catch for a while, if at all. And it just gets really frustrating for a lot of us that like to try and stay on top of things and how things work in the game so that we can make informed decisions when it comes to creating our classes or adjusting our playstyles accordingly. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up again. I find this quite disappointing, especially because this was never a major problem with previous Call of Duty games. Like, yeah, every once in a while they would forget to put something in the patch notes, but those situations in the past were typically quite rare. Whereas this year with Modern Warfare, it seems like it's literally every single update we get, there are gameplay related changes that they've made that they just fail to mention in the patch notes. Even just a vague mention of some of these things would be enough to at least point us in the right direction so we could test it out for ourselves and see what's going on and see how things have improved or been nerfed. But that's just my thoughts on things. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the changes that were unannounced with the patch notes from yesterday? Do you like that update to high alert? Do you really like that they've buffed that significantly? Or do you think that's now going to be too overpowered or annoying? And also, what are your thoughts on the fact that they are making these gameplay related changes behind the scenes without letting us know? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.